So hello and welcome to the Dharma.life podcast. I'm your host, Aloise.life, and this week I have an incredible woman with me who specializes in DNA reprogramming. So I'm so excited to dive in. I first discovered Geraldine on a round table, and I loved her vibe, I loved her energy, I loved the fact that she has this incredible galactic connection. So I knew that we needed to get her on the Dharma.life podcast. And it's taken us a couple of tries, but I know this is like divine timing. So Geraldine Orozco, welcome to the Dharma.life podcast.
Awesome. Aloise, thank you so much for having me. It's a gift to be here. And thanks for everything you're doing to host this podcast, this platform.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And, I'm so excited to have this conversation because you kind of specialize in this DNA upgrading that we're all going through at the moment. So I'd love for you just to share with our audience, who you are, what you do in the world, so we can get a kind of fuller understanding of the magic that you are creating.
Thank you so much. So I'm Geraldine Orozco, and I'm a certified hypnotherapist. I have a long laundry list of little things that I have specialized in, along with pranic energy healer, quantum energy healer. And I've studied many different modalities over the past 10, 12 years. But the primary work that I do now, as a result of life-changing experiences coming into an awareness of what our multidimensional body looks like and is and functions from the deeper level, is something called DNA reprogramming. And I guess, should I talk about how I got into that? Do you want me to just get into that?
Well, let's get back. Let's take you back, because what we love to do on this podcast is we love to kind of discuss the awakening story and the awakening journey, because I know that, people can relate. So, yeah, please tell me a little bit about how you find yourself doing this work.
Mm-hmm. So prior to this work, I was an event planner. I had my own company. I transitioned from the corporate world into having an entrepreneur. Basically, I started my own business. And during that beginning of the business, I started to train in shamanic energy healing. I was very much interested in healing modalities and meditation. And what I found was the incredible results of meditation. And it just caused so much success in my life, grounding awareness of everything around me. And I just wanted to share that with the world. So I created a meetup group called Bay Area Meditation. And, after inviting people to come over and meditate with me, and the group grew from 20 people to 700 people. And it turned into a business, a side business in which we began to teach meditation and in corporate settings. So I got invited to Google and Facebook and all of these, Silicon Valley companies in which we began to share meditation. And so it was great. It kind of expanded into Bay Area Meditation, what's known now as a corporate meditation program, but alongside my event planning company. And I was very interested in how our mind functions, and more importantly, trying to understand why we continue to have cyclical patterns of pain and suffering in our lives. I realized that as I went deeper within the layers of my own mind, I began to surface up all kinds of things that I wasn't able to find, let's say, solutions for in the outside world, or even at conferences and speaking, or even books. I wasn't able to integrate fully what was coming up, And so what I decided after a while, after being, kind of tired of these ups and down roller coasters of life, is to kind of really implement and make myself my own spiritual guinea pig, in which I started to practice all of the techniques I've ever heard of, everything I've ever read, mindfulness, all of these things about self-love. I began to implement them in my life. And that's when I started to find a huge change in how I was looking at my meditation practice. And it brought me into an incredible opening and deprogramming of all of the matrix programming of identity, of self, of, I mean, everything culturally, from religion, from the perspective of all of these different angles that we take on as an identity, of ourselves, began to completely, deprogram that. And what I found was the true Geraldine at the core of that. And I think as a result of that kind of deprogramming and moving away from a very separate, compartmentalized view of the world, came into this understanding of a unity within and without. And I experienced in 2013 an incredible life-changing experience in which I was... I experienced interdimensional contact. I was literally taken out of my room into this craft with these beings that introduced me to a series of incredible information. But
Was
these
this
children...
meditation, or was this just you were asleep in bed and they came into sleep? How was that?
Yeah, so I was sleeping, and all of a sudden I'm woken by a giant white light in this room, giant white light. And I mean, it's, at the moment I thought, maybe someone's trying to break into the house, because I live in a very quiet neighborhood, and there isn't traffic on my street, and it's kind of a curved street. So in order for a light to be shining in my room, they would have to be on the other opposite side of the street, shining a car light. I thought it was a car light at first. So I get out of bed and I walk over to my window. And as I'm looking through the blinds, the light gets brighter and I become paralyzed. My entire body becomes paralyzed. And I'm literally taken from the inside of my window out into above my garage. My bedroom is over a garage, and just taken into this incredible craft where I am seeing these beings, these tall, 7-foot beings with these giant eyes. And, I'm terrified. I've never in my life heard of extraterrestrials like this, or the concept of that. I mean, I'd never touched that subject, right? It never came up in my spiritual journey yet. And so as I'm taking into the craft, I know it was a life-changing experience, but when they introduced me to these children that were said to be mine. And that, I think, was the moment where I really went into, a shock, because a million questions flooded my mind. How did these children come to be? How come I didn't know about them? What is my connection to them? What does this mean for us here on Earth? I was trying to merge this experience with our everyday life, which is impossible. I mean, it's so hard to integrate an experience like that. And so literally 3 hours later at 6 a.m., I'm brought into my bedroom again, and I'm laying on the side. I find myself hanging off the side of the bed, upside down, facing down, and my body is aching. I'm dizzy. I can't even recognize where I'm at. And the first thing I want to do is call the cops, really. And this is funny because I'm thinking, who do I call for assistance when something like this happens? I laugh about it now, but at the time it was pretty shocking, and it was interesting to try to, when you have these rips in your reality, the veils open in such a way, you don't know if there's a higher power, you don't know who's in charge of what, and it's a very interesting experience. So all of you that experience that, I can relate to a disassociation that may occur, or a shock. So as a result of that, of that experience.
Do you know
what's that?
Do you know what they were? Because you described, I had this vision of mantis. Is it the mantis?
Well, the mantis do visit. I do have an interesting relationship with the mantis, but these were grays. They were like grays, but tall, 7-foot, very frail, thin bodies.
What we think of when we think about
exactly. Yes, but taller, more thinner, more structured face. And so the children that they introduced me to were a combination of things. I mean, they were half human, but you can also see that there was a mixture of some kind of other genetics of some sort. I mean, there were some that were looking like they were more reptilian, literally had a scaly greenish tint to the face. The eyes were like, slits, and just incredible size of the eyes, were the size of our ocular sockets, basically the pupils. So it was shocking to see that, and when you see something like that, you think, well, if these are the children, you don't want to have this emotional response or rejection against them, and the thing is, like, the question is, well, how do you get back to these children, and what's your role? What's your role in this whole thing? My major question was, where does our free will lie? And the next Monday, I began to see my clients. And when the first client that I saw, immediately I was able to see their entire multidimensional body. I can feel what they were feeling. I can see colors. All I saw was blurs of colors. Yes. So this experience had activated a sort of psychic ability interaction, where literally the veil was open, and I couldn't leave my house for 3 months after that, because I was so sensitive to everything, people's emotions, feelings, energy around me. So it was a beginning of the change of my life. And years after that, in 2017, I finally decided to dive deep into those experiences and try to understand them. It was hard. I had to make a choice between staying in my corporate business, in my company, or diving into this experience that really just completely changed my reality, my entire paradigm. And so it came to the point where I decided to sell the business and focus fully on this. And I think it was through the Hypnosis Regression, which they are public. You can watch them. Really dove into that experience deeper as a lifelong experiencer, not just that one isolated experience in which I was conscious and aware.
Wow, Geraldine, what a story. My goodness, that is absolutely incredible. Like, I knew you had an alien intervention story, but I didn't realize quite the extent of it. And and so I suppose what I'm curious about is, when you went back into the past lives, is there some type of agreement or arrangement that you made then before you came down, or what's the contract that effectively you entered into?
Yeah, so in the hypnosis, so what we're trying to understand is, how did I end up having these kinds of experiences? And it really started in this life, before we even got into the other lives. It was reviewing all the things that have happened to me in this life, medical records, experiences, miscarriages, anomalous illnesses that came up. And it started to make sense. Like, my entire life experience began to make sense. Experiences and memories as a child of having lights in my room that I could never erase. But at that time, and throughout your entire life, you will never link ET or interdimensional contact or these kinds of phenomena, with your everyday life, because your mind is so far away from that. So it started going there, and then after reviewing my life, I began to go back now to the origin of these things. And where I found myself was in Mesopotamia, working alongside these beings that were called the Nephilim and Anunnakis. And, the first time I uttered that word, I mean, I didn't even know what it means. I couldn't even pronounce the word that was coming to mind. And I started to kind of go through, I was shown an entire map of the world and how life was seated on this planet from the origin, from Mesopotamia. And what I was shown was that three main bloodlines, in a sense, were the origin of what we know now as our human race. And it was shown as how these bloodlines have evolved. Some of them have been heavily preserved through our historic timeline, and all trickled down into all these different races that we now are. So the agreements, obviously, to experience this and to have such a powerful awakening, I guess, at that point, or an awareness of this literally rewriting of history, this historical timeline and our evolution, from this perspective and this experience, was interesting, because I didn't realize that this was something that people researched. I didn't understand that people had already written books about this. I mean, to me, this information was completely new. So it was interesting to have that experience. And of course, the contractual agreements were just of awakening and bringing into the light these kinds of experiences. The hybridization program, understanding, I guess from those experiences came a very deep awareness of what holographic DNA is, and that we are made of this holographic system that is interconnected with everything. And understanding consciousness on that level and how we interact with these interdimensionals, I think is important, because it's something that, in a sense, it's almost as if the veil is thinning. We're coming into this awareness through our own personal journeys. The deeper you go down into spirituality, the question of consciousness will come up. And the deeper you go down the extraterrestrial concept, consciousness will also come up, right? So it's like the missing bridge between these two unseen worlds that sooner or later, I believe every human will come to at some point, in their journey.
Wow. Wow, and there's so many places I could go now with this interview, but so essentially what you're saying, obviously we're all starting to see the real history of the planet, which is obviously what you're referring to, the fact that we were, essentially an experiment, and you're talking about the bloodlines. So people are starting to understand that they are multidimensional beings and that we have this DNA, this ET connection. So is your role from that aspect just to be a light bringer to help people understand this process?
I think, yeah.
No, carry on.
Sorry, go ahead. I think what I've understood is that, I don't want to define my life as having any particular purpose or mission of any kind. I try to shy away from that kind of word. What it is really is, I guess, through my personal experience, the embodiment of an understanding of what our consciousness, what we're capable of as humans, when we deprogram all of the false programming that we've become a product of, is an incredible, expansive opening of human potential, human possibility. And the fact that we have the ability to embody free will, which is a word that I was not familiar with. I mean, our concept of free will is kind of, as you're waking up, it kind of grows. First it looks like this. And then later, when you really get into this understanding, it's like, the world's a limit. And so I think the perspective of how to look at the soul as it incarnates and attaches to this physical body, the journey of the soul as infinite consciousness becoming aware of itself through all possibilities, all of these possible life experiences, all of that is for our awareness, for our experience. And how we dive through this experience of duality and return back into that wholeness is, I think, the message through all these experiences that I personally have and my life. And so my hope now is to hold space for seekers, people that are looking for answers, to find themselves in that journey and to unlock through their body, which is this incredible technology, the ability to tap into that infinite consciousness for healing, for abundance. I mean, our reality, the system of our reality is built from the inside out. It knows you. It understands how you function in such a profound way, more so than we know. And it isn't until we wake up and we understand how we work from the inside out that we can begin to create that magic or that incredible manifestation ability, and we begin to co-create and shift and change timelines. A lot of things come into play by understanding how we function. And so this is kind of what I want to share with the world, basically. Yeah.
Amazing. And also, I think for so many other starseeds out there, I think for me, it was so a relief, actually, when I made that starseed connection, because I think people can relate listening. A lot of us are different. A lot of us have had not the traditional path. My own background was break down, drug and alcohol problems. And I think when I finally came to this realization of this galactic connection, I felt like I'd come home, and it gave me a level of peace that I'd never experienced before. So I'd love you maybe just to speak to our Starseed listeners, you know.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting, Eloise. I work with a lot of starseeds every day, and in the work that I do. And I think what's interesting is that a lot of us that have pulled away from everyday lives into distractions, like alcohol, like anything, any kind of addictive thing that takes you away or numbs reality. I think we've had this inner knowing within us that the world around us is not working in the way it should. And I think it's through that inner knowing that we create this disassociation with what we feel within intuitively and what the world is telling us is right. And so in that process, we want to run away. We want to separate from that, and a lot of pain, because we don't understand what pain is or how to work with the pain that we're holding on from, that kind of disconnect. We tend to go into these kinds of
Action, right?
and any kind of activities that take us away from feeling and truly being in the present moment. So a lot of starseeds deal with all kinds of addictions, all kinds of escapes, distractions. And so the message is really, it's like you were right. You were right in the beginning. It was difficult. It was hard. The emotions that you felt, a lot of you are empathic, and it was too much. Like, it was hard for you to hold on to that sensitivity to people's emotions, picked up on their feelings, on what they were thinking, on all of these things. And so what we want to do now that we know that we are these extra sensitive interdimensional beings is that we have the ability to learn how to balance and navigate and in a sense, become aware that we have control over our perception in these experiences. And so, yeah.
Now it's becoming exciting because obviously
Exactly.
those gifts, all that stuff that I've kind of gone through is now opening up into different gifts. But so talk to me about the children, because obviously, were these your children that you were describing in this human hybridization, or?
Yes, absolutely. And so, okay. So you meet the children, and you see yourself in them. It's not like it's an interesting experience, because the moment that I saw the child, I saw myself in the child, and I started to have memories of other times that I had been with the child on craft or other experiences early, even the time of gestation process of the child, which there were times in my life where I became pregnant without even being partnered, and then had miscarriages in very unique moments in my life. Where we're all
like, did you experience physical, like human?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So the whole symptoms of pregnancy, going through that emotional roller coaster too, because, you would think that you were pregnant. And then, after a while the child wouldn't be there. The fetus would not be there. Right. So usually women go through the process of insemination, gestation, retrieval or removal, and then visitation or presentation. So this is kind of how the majority of these women that experience the hybridization program experience all these different aspects of it. And so it's very interesting because when you are introduced to these children, a lot of women are not aware that they've even had the children, but somehow it seems to be a part of the process that is very vivid for a lot of women. They are introduced to the children. So to me, the question was, what's the purpose of that? And there's several reasons for that. One of them, as we know, like, in order to grow a human being, it requires love, affection, an exchange of energy, an exchange of awareness and intention for that being to grow. And that's scientifically proven. There's been hundreds of experiments done with little mice, and how nurturing, promotes the growth and advancement of that organism, of that living organism. And so it's the same with all living beings. And I believe that this is something that they are also implementing in this program. Now, these hybrid children that are being born, the question was, are these children being reinserted in our timeline? And so
Okay.
mhm. There are multiple hybridization programs. There are 4 hybridization programs from which I was a part of. One of them is a darker kind of agenda. Let's say it's a draconian kind of agenda. The other is a reptilian. Another is a Pleiadian or human type of hybridization program. And another is a terrestrial program, which we have here on Earth, which is run by our military. And so the interest is for genetic information, right? Because these children are a combination, I would say a cocktail of DNA, as they, present themselves as these very interesting beings. And some of them are utilized for programs that are not necessarily of high vibration or high, end goal, but others are these incredibly activated within their DNA, strands of DNA that allow them to not only be interdimensional, but their spiritual capacity, their interdimensional capacity is tremendous. And some of these children are put into the reincarnation cycle as souls, because what is actually being modified and utilized is the soul essence. This is what's being utilized. What's in a sense being hybridized is the essence of a human. When we have children, it's almost as if our part of our soul is written within the coding of these children. Because we are one. We are only one consciousness. And so anytime that we become fragmented, either through procreation or even trauma, we are splitting up ourselves into these different aspects of ourselves, different timelines. And so these children are an extension of ourselves. Okay. And so the soul, which is coded with our information, is then put into either timeline of reincarnation. We can look through Mary Rodwell. There's a writer, Mary Rodwell, that speaks on the hybrids. And she does a lot of research on these children that are highly, highly advanced children that at the age of 8, they are speaking to physics at the level of, quantum physics at university level. And they have an understanding of the universe and themselves.
That's what I've read.
Beyond.
I've read,
What's that?
well, I've kind of been becoming more and more aware of how these children, a very friend of mine, one of her daughter is incredibly gifted at a very extrasensory capacity and abilities, and way beyond anything anyone can fathom. So I've just been, I suppose, interested in there's more of these souls, children coming to Earth, as we ascend. The vibration
Yes.
is higher.
It's incredibly interesting. If you guys have a chance to check out her work, where she talks about these hybrid children, she's done a lot of research with them, interviewed many of these children, like your friend's daughter or son. Did you say, Eloise?
Daughter.
Okay, so it's very interesting, and what we're trying to understand is like how consciousness moves through these different souls. How does it manifest within the body? And what I've understood by looking at the soul attaching to the body in a time of birth and at the time of death is that this soul attaches to the physical body. It's attaching to two different networks of information. It attaches to the DNA, which is the ancestral lineage that interconnects you to your entire, family, and all of the information that is running within that DNA lineage. Can be traced back to the very origin of life on this planet. As a matter of fact, you and I have somebody in a relative, just 2,000 years ago, you and I had someone in common. So it just, we all come from this origin, and the information that is being utilized to create these beings, whether they be these human beings, these interdimensional beings that are connected with other aspects, is just all it is the activation of our DNA. We look at our DNA as we understand a very small part of the DNA, and the majority of that we call junk DNA. But it's within that junk DNA that we are storing massive amounts of information. Within a teaspoon of DNA, you can store the entire historic history of this planet. Okay, so can you imagine how much information are you holding in your body, and what's in that information that we have yet to really understand how to read? And we are understanding it now more and more. I mean, 20 years ago, we became aware of epigenetics, right? Epigenetics is basically an understanding of how DNA is being written, which is being somehow influenced by your environment, by the choices that you make. You can shift and change. You're not married to the information that's in your DNA or passed down, diseases that are passed down through your information, right? So we're learning that as humans, we have more power over this physical body and the experiences that we have from the inside out. And it's within that coding, kind of like the algorithm of your body, of your system, this holographic system, that we want to learn how to work with that information so that we can create more health, more awareness. So these hybrid children are a cocktail of that DNA. That's why they have such a profound connection to these interdimensional awareness, to these, extraterrestrials. And so do we. So do we. I mean, you woke up to your experience. I woke up to mine. I believe that I came upon that experience by the deprogramming that I was doing, right? All of this very limited matrix programming. When I broke that, it allowed for me, it activated my DNA in order to have experiences that were beyond this physical veil. And a lot of starseeds experience that. So it can be sometimes daunting because it's difficult to integrate these two parts, right? This non-physical and physical.
Put words into as well, and it's difficult to whether
Yes.
I find either what sometimes I'm like, well, is this my imagination or is this, and then I get physical feedback. So I will get a book that will be presented to me to read, or something will happen which gives me the physical confirmation that the information I'm getting is actually true, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
absolutely. I mean, it makes so much sense because, well, what we are is a unified field of consciousness. We are in constant communication with our environment, and the environment responds to us, and we communicate with everything around us. Everything, when you look at it under a microscope, they are these molecules oscillating, right, to create this solid form or less solid form. And so we are constantly communicating with the things around us. Even the things around us hold on to information. In my healing work, when I work with deprogramming and healing people, and I'm moving and I see stagnant energy in the body, and I remove that stagnant energy, it's very important to understand how energy transfers, because you can never eliminate energy. You only can reallocate or transmute that energy. And so it's interesting because the more that we unpack the heavy programs, the storylines of suffering, all of these identity aspects of ourselves, until we come into this 0 point, which is a state of neutrality. I call it the 0 point because you're coming in, what you realize, is that you are everything and nothing at the same time. And sometimes that's really hard to wrap your head around, but the only way you're going to understand that is by doing the inner work. Okay, the only way you will get to that point is a state of neutrality, of complete observation and awareness of yourself and the experiences that you have. And when you enter that state, that's where magic starts to happen, because you are now moving from an externalized experience and externalizing all your stimulation and sensory systems into this unified experience with all things. And that's when you start seeing repetitive numbers, all of these little messages that the universe is now, you're working, you are now collaborating. Yes, you are in sync, and you are in a sense manifesting and co-creating. That's what it means to co-create. You are a contributor to this experience. This is how we begin to change timelines. Even now, in this time that we're experiencing right now of tremendous shift, is an opportunity for us to understand these things, because even though the world around us outside might be seemingly falling apart, our ability to connect with our inner self and understand the body is our ability to change timelines. Literally, how you
fast. We're jumping timelines.
Exactly.
More and more people are waking up. I think that's the exciting thing for me. Like, my work is in helping people create or do their Dharma, but create the reality they desire. So we do group 5D meditations and activations and visualizations where I take people into a year into the future. I take them into 5 years into the future because they're taking back their power. So, they understand that actually more and more of us, we create the reality that we want and we desire. So that's the exciting thing for me at the moment. But how do people, because obviously DNA is like a really hot topic at the moment, and you were talking about this junk DNA, and of course this is what's being activated as we ascend. So for our listeners, are there things that you can suggest or recommend, or can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So our DNA is holographic in a sense where we are an interconnected network of oscillating molecules that create a network of communication with all areas of our body. And so what that means is that it's a storage system that's activated by our choices, by our actions. Our environment is contributing to the information that's writing our DNA, the things that we choose, everything we feel, eat, think, all of those things are contributing and providing information and environment for DNA to be written. And when I say it's holographic, it means that the information that we're storing within the body, such as experiences, whether they be happy experiences or traumatic experiences, all of that stores within the body in a very complex system. The soul, when it attaches to the physical body, that infinite consciousness, that infinite white light that comes into this dimensional, three-dimensional plane, it organizes itself in the body in what we know as the chakra system. And the chakra system, we have a range of frequency, right? From the lowest to the highest, we're storing that information in the body. And depending on the experiences that you have, they will store within the body in those areas. So for example, if you're experiencing heartbreak or heartache, or sadness, the experience, how it happened, and the contributors to that experience, whether they were male or female, all of those things are providing information and data that will organize the information within the body. And that's also where it's going to store itself. So we might have a lot of stagnant information here in the chest, for example, and it's interconnected and affecting our liver, for example. All of this is connected with a vibrational frequency of emotions and how it stores within the body. So all of this is a holographic system that information is being stored ultimately in the DNA. And so what happens is that generationally, if you can imagine that, we are passing down cyclical ancestral trauma, and we are basically a product. We are holding within our body all of that information from the origin of life in this planet. So as souls, we enter into what we call the reincarnation cycle in order to, and we are allocated, the soul is allocated and comes and connects with these lineages, these ancestral lineages based on vibrational resonance. Because in a sense, there's a lesson there that has to be learned, a lesson that has to be experienced. And so we come into these timelines. So when we talk about deprogramming DNA and how we work with holographic DNA is by understanding that the human body is not just this physical body. We are more non-physical than physical. And it's within that non-physical, we have 7 layers, and we have multiple layers of this body. Actually, what we look like is like a giant orb of light. This is what we look like. Within those layers of information, we are holding on to emotions, experiences, traumas, past lives, future lives, all of these fragments of ourselves that make up this whole human organism is written within the DNA. So when we go into meditation work, any kind of regressive work that you do, deprogramming, you go back to those experiences, and by dissolving the trauma and those storylines that you're taking on as a part of this matrix human experience on Earth, you begin to unlock and activate your DNA. And so, in a sense, that holographic DNA begins to shift. It changes. It becomes lighter as you unpack and begin to move your human physical body, your energy, from a lower frequency into a higher frequency. So your entire body is basically emanating a vibrational frequency that's at a higher level. So, what's interesting about this work is that it affects not just our health, but it begins, as I mentioned earlier, we begin to be this organism of creation. And the more we unpack from the body, you come into that 0 point. It's only in the present moment, right now, that you have the greatest power to manifest and create and affect this current timeline. It's only in the present moment. Yeah.
I was just going to say, well, obviously, the more we free up our trauma and our stuck energy, the more we vibrate higher. So I see this
Exactly.
all the time, Geraldine, in my program, where people come in and we work with them to get in alignment with their soul vibration, with their purpose. And of course, when they do that, they're getting into that higher vibrational frequency of who they actually are. And then we take them on a healing journey to heal the trauma. And you see their health conditions improve. And so, is that the work you do? Like you do, but you do it from a regression perspective.
Exactly. No, not just regression. It's, you don't even need to be in hypnosis to get into that work, but you go into the root cause of this trauma. And it can be anything. It can be the emotion that you're feeling right this moment. If you follow that emotion back to the root cause, you can open up incredible information that just in that moment of understanding, the roles that are being played and taking yourself into a state of neutrality in those experiences, you begin to dissolve the heaviness that you took on from that emotional experience. And little by little, you are kind of going through what I did in my life was completely go through my entire life, deprogram all of those life experiences, and it opened up past lives. So I started to go into all my past lives and do healing work there. And so you begin to understand that you are one unified organism. But this not only affects your past lives, it affects obviously your future and your body now. So if you're experiencing an illness or some kind of imbalance in the body, aches and pains, all of that, you have the ability of healing, of transforming, of changing how you're experiencing those physical symptoms, because everything is in the DNA, everything is in this holographic system that we're experiencing. So when we talk about deprogramming, we're activating those parts. When I work with clients, we are identifying the vibrational frequency that heals their unique body. Every single human has an emanation of their vibrational frequency, which is basically the result of all the information that they're made up of.
Like we do it in the Akashic records, so we can go in and we can measure the frequency of the individual, essentially.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that vibrational frequency, that signature that each human is applied to the human. And when we use that vibrational frequency through tonal voice, it begins to activate and deprogram the human body. And so words are power. They are encoded with information. So the words that you utilize in a DNA reprogramming and the tone that you're using, the intention that you're using in that is what begins to unlock the DNA. And so when you understand that, you can do anything. I mean, there is a physicist, a Russian physicist, his name is Dr. Peter Garayev, that researches holographic DNA. And he's literally created a clinic in Russia where they are literally growing, parts of the body just by using this vocal intonation, and of course using a computer system to create a binary to communicate, right? They're changing the DNA code into binary and using that to create like a language. Our DNA is very much like a language. When you can shift and change the words, and it completely changes what your DNA is producing. But in that same way, you're doing that through your experiences. You're doing that through the food that you eat. You are affecting this human organism through all the experiences that you have.
And what do you think this means then for humankind as we ascend? The work that you're doing sounds incredible. So we are almost unlocking our gifts and our superpowers.
Yes. Exactly. And ultimately, we are redefining what the human is. This is what we want to do. This is what I believe a spiritual journey is about. It's understanding that we are not the human story. We're not the human condition. We're not locked to that identities that are created by a system that is specifically created for you to experience polarity, right? And the only way to experience polarity is by experiencing those two extremes, right? Either joy, happiness, and yes, exactly. Sadness and suffering. And so we have to be brought into all of these stories, right? We have parents that didn't you quite meet the expectations, relationships, very traumatic experiences, people that I work with every single day, but if you understand that all of those experiences as a soul are just part of an experience, in order for you to understand this body and how you can transmute these lower frequency experiences into high experiences, the body has the ability of activating these, like you said, like a superpower, which is very true. You begin to activate your intuition, your ability to see, to sense. Some of you are already empathic, highly empathic. And so you have the ability to communicate with your environment, but it can go. I feel that we as a collective, it's a part of evolution. We're activating collectively these abilities, psychic abilities. More of us are tuning into that psychic ability. We are tuning into our telepathy. We're tuning into a lot of different things, even remote viewing. We begin to activate a lot of these things that we have the ability to do. And so what we want to come into is a new human that is responsibly utilizing these things. Because let me tell you, even our government is very much aware of all of these abilities.
And not
And they've
necessarily use
been
them responsibly.
exactly that, they've been utilizing them for the wrong reasons in military for years, since the 50s, since the 30s. There have been experiments being done on highly empathic people. And so there's a reason for that. There's an incredible power there that we hold as a united human race. And so the opportunity now is that in this time of change and shift, we want to come into this understanding of a unified consciousness, that each one of us, the deeper we go within, the more connected and interconnected we are as a network that can affect change and transformation in the whole. And what we're working here is experiencing this polarity, right, temporarily, as we understand that we can come in from looking at things at black and white into unity. I mean, what unconditional love is the ability to take all things as a part of yourself. And if we embody that, we can really create change for our body and everything, what we're manifesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where I see us going, the golden age, Leo Aquarius, unity consciousness. I think it's incredible time to be alive, and to be witnessing the transition. We're breaking down to literally break through.
Mhm.
But Geraldine, I could talk to you all day. So fascinating.
Thank you.
Can people come and do physical sessions with you? Is that how you work? Or can you explain a little bit about that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. What I do is DNA reprogramming, and I also host hypnotherapy sessions. You can connect with me, my website at geraldineorozco.com, and I hold the sessions internationally through Zoom. So, you can connect with me there. And also, if you're an experiencer and you need to understand better your hybridization experience or your contact experience, I created a international support group at hybridmother.com. And I just recently launched a new website for all of you empaths and healers out there called Higher Healing. That's Higher, HIRE, which is an exclusive network for healers that are coming into their powers, that are gifts to share with the world, so that we can connect seekers and healers in one place. So please do check that out. I'm excited to share that. Also, for all of you that are interested in research of phenomena, I am a director of Opus as well, one of the co-directors in their directory board that helps research interdimensional contact, extraterrestrial, all the phenomena that we are looking at, and experiencing in our world. So please do check that out and support these great organizations like Opus and, all these fun things. So thank you so much, Aloise, again for having me. It's been a pleasure and a gift. And yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. And we will make sure we put all those details in the show notes. So for anybody listening, we'll get all those details from Geraldine. But wow, yeah, I feel like it was like the tip of the iceberg, but we talk for days. But fascinating work that you're doing. And thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much, Aloise. It's been a gift. Thank you for the work that you do too.
And we will see you next week on another episode of the Dharma Life podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the Dharma Life podcast. I do hope you enjoyed this episode. Please come over and say hello on my Instagram, our Facebook group, and also please let me know what you thought. So if you are listening, please take a screenshot of the podcast that you are listening to. Tag me on Instagram and I will reshare your post, and please let me know what it is that you got out of today's episode. Remember, when we do our Dharma, we are happier, healthier, we live longer, and we have a deep sense of unshakable inner peace.